Hello, I'm Sarah Bialek, host of the Efficacious Educator Podcast. Our mission is to explore the factor with the highest impact on student achievement, collective teacher efficacy, or the collectively held belief that we have what it takes to support and teach each and every one of our students. In support of this mission, we will be interviewing teachers and school leaders who have collectively solved a problem in their schools, and we'll look at the factors or conditions that were in place that supported them to develop, implement, and sustain these collectively derived solutions. Our first guest is Sean Mulvey. Sean is the principal of Summit School in Grand Junction, Colorado. Summit is part of the district's portfolio of schools. It's a therapeutic, supportive environment for students who have experienced difficulties at home, in school, or in the community. Sean, welcome, and thank you for being on the podcast and agreeing to be a guest today.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. I'm very grateful just to have the opportunity to speak with you today.
Well, there's a great story to be told about Summit and the quality staff that work there, including you. So before we get into your work at Summit, though, can we talk about a topic that's near and dear to your heart, restorative practices?
Yeah, I love restorative practices. It wasn't always that way when I first started with restorative practices, but I drank the Kool-Aid. I am in 100%. I love restorative practices and what they bring to conflict resolution in schools. It's an amazing process, and it's something worthy of diving into.
Well, in that vein, could you tell us more about your professional background and how you became such an advocate for restorative practices in schools?
Yeah, of course. I graduated college in about 2001. I believe so, 2002. And so I was kind of floating around for a little bit, working in some gas stations and a paint store. I had an anthropology degree. And then just like life happens, I was 23 years old, and I was getting ready to have a kid. So I needed to find something a little bit more serious. And so I moved over to Colorado Springs, and I got hooked up with a place called the Emily Griffith Center for Children. It was a great opportunity and experience. I started there in 2003, and I worked on the Larkspur campus. It opened my eyes. I was pretty naive when I entered into it. And so 2003 to 2006, I worked for Emily Griffith Center. We had a lot of tough kids there. They were in residential treatment centers for a number of reasons. And then I got a job in the district in 2006. So I went on to get my special ed master's. 2003 to 2006, 2007, I finished. And so I started teaching for Emily Griffith Center in about 2004. I've been a teacher since, and I've worked as a special ed teacher, Grand Junction High School, Fruita Monument High School, R5. I was an intervention specialist, and then I moved on to be an expulsion coordinator in the district for a couple years. And then last year I got called up to be a principal. And so it's been an interesting journey and how I've got here, but I'm grateful for it. And I've had a lot of great experiences with kids and adults and humans that are really working to help kids have better lives.
And in part of my background research, I discovered that you were a football coach in the high schools there. And you were named at one point by the Denver Broncos the NFL Coach of the Week. Could you say a little bit more about how your coaching supported you in developing your expertise in restorative practices?
Yeah, absolutely. The main reason I wanted to get into education was because I wanted to be a coach. I had a really great experience in my life with some coaches, and some coaches really reached out to me and saved my life. You know, they knew that I was going through some tough stuff as a kid, and that it wasn't easy, and they really gave me a lot of support that wasn't on the field. And so, like, when I saw the job and the opportunity to become a teacher, um, I jumped at it because I wanted the opportunity to get back on the field and really repay what I had been given, which was a second chance, I felt like, to make different choices and still be alive, you know? So I had just a really great feeling in my heart that I wanted to coach. I love sports. For me, it was the only thing that really got me through school was having a team, having something to look forward to and something to work for. And so got into coaching and did that. And, teams are really cool, great opportunities to learn because you get to see so many different people and how they do business. You got the coaches that like to yell and scream and really chew butt. I really took a different approach to it. I wanted to teach like I'd been taught. Yeah. And so getting into coaching really helped me to refine my education and how I was teaching kids. It helped me to really break down and look at where skill deficits were for kids. And it just helped really round me out and make me a better educator because you've got to teach it in so many different ways being on the field. And coaching was something that I've been passionate about my whole life. And it was probably the hardest decision I made was to step away from coaching last year to jump into this administration role. But it was something I was really grateful for, and it helped me to learn how you solve problems on teams is you got to get people to sit down, and there's always going to be conflict on teams. There's going to be kids fighting, and it gave me a good background, and kids can solve problems, and that as adults we can help support that, and how we approach it is really huge.
Let's jump into Summit now. Could you tell us about this Summit School and the students you currently serve as a principal?
Yeah, so our Summit School program is our most restrictive environment that we have in Mason County Valley School District number 51. We serve kids that are K through 9, and we really have two programs underneath one roof. So our therapeutic day program is our most restrictive special education environment. Kids come to us, and we have currently a K3 classroom, a 4-5 classroom, a 6-7, and an 8-9. It is a referral based program. Kids that come to us usually have an emotionally or behaviorally disturbed designation. And they come to us with that behavior intervention plan, and something wasn't going right at the other school. Some physical aggression, just some breakdowns. And so they come to us to get some retraining on some skills and get therapeutic help as well. So we also house some in house therapists that work with the kids and provide groups and individual therapy with them. And so that's kind of our TDP side. We call it the Therapeutic Day Program. On the Summit side, we're kind of a middle school reset program. So we're a 6, 7, and 8. It is kind of considered a tier 2. It's not as intensive as the Therapeutic Day Program side. But kids come to us again on a referral basis. Again, something wasn't working at the middle school. They had a lot of discipline incidences, and the school had just tried some interventions. They've been trying interventions, and the interventions hadn't worked. And so we're one of the only ones in the state. There's only a few of us that are out there. And, I feel really fortunate and blessed that our district believes in it. And they give those kids that chance. And so that's us, is we come in and we try to reteach those skills. And we rely heavily on restorative practices in all the classes, trying to get kids to circle up and talk to each other and listen to each other and understand how we affect each other. And so our Summit program really works on our middle school kids. That can be a quarter to quarter basis. And if the kids are showing really good behaviors and other stuff, we try to transition them back as quickly as possible to their home schools.
Great. So they learn some new skills and then they're able to do better when they return to their schools. Do you ever get reports back on how kids are doing once they transition?
Yeah, we want to keep that open line of communication with the home schools because, a big part of us sending our kids back is what we're looking at as professionals. And we're saying, hey, this kid has met their goals. We write all their goals based individually off of why they came to our program. And so, like, if a kid is having a real hard time engaging in class, but he's also, you know, just verbally attacking the teacher, doing those other things, we want to work on skills that are going to help him communicate when he goes back. And so it's really big for us to know how our kids are doing when they go back. We get reports. Quite a bit of our kids do really well when they go back, and we have some kids that continue to struggle, but the line of communication is very huge so that we can also see that if we're doing is working.
You mentioned that You are one of the few schools in the state, and or one of the few schools like this in the state that are district schools that are therapeutic schools. There was a recent Chalkbeat article, which I'll link in the show notes, and it discussed the closure of 50 out of 80 previously existing facility schools in the past 20 years here in Colorado. And Emily Griffith falls within this category of private facility schools that serve some of the state's most vulnerable students. There's a new state law here in Colorado that's going to boost funding for these programs that support children with intense behavioral, mental health, or special education needs. So, Sean, there is a question here. Based on your experience in the behavioral and mental health space for children, what are some of the gaps you hope are filled by this new funding?
Well, I mean, they made those changes to Medicaid a few years ago, and it really made it almost impossible for those facility schools to exist. And so bridging that gap and providing it, the need doesn't go away because the funding isn't there. You know, and we've seen it in COVID, since COVID, that we've had the intensification of mental health needs and in all schools across there, and they're happening with our kids and our learners younger and younger. And so we've got a lot of open nets and a lot of open holes around where kids are falling through the cracks and they're not getting the support and the help that they need. And to be able to provide and fund those services to where kids can get in and talk to trained professionals that can provide the help, they can help them process really what's going on. I love the Griffin Center. Like when I worked there, I'm so grateful for that opportunity. I learned from really, really great people that had huge hearts, and they were working to help kids. And it was something that really aligned with what I believed in. And so it was very disappointing to hear that the Medicaid funding and all those things had dropped on all those programs. So I'm hoping that the mental health services and getting the kids to schooling, but also we have kids that are so intense and they don't go away, that families are out there and they're struggling. They got kids that need the residential help and they need the residential support to get out of their house so that they can run a household and keep their other kids safe. It's so huge that we get the funding and just help.
Yeah. So does Summit have a pretty large and substantive waiting list because there's a demand for this type of service? I imagine the district created the program because of that demand.
Yeah, it really depends. On the TDP side, we take about 6 to 8 kids per class. And so our biggest class right now is 7. And so we try not to get up above 8, but we do have a little bit of a wait list on some classrooms. Our referrals were down a little bit this first quarter, but um, as we've transitioned, we lost a leader 2 years ago at this school that had been here for almost like 20, 25 plus years. Tammy Houston, she ran a great program here. And so last year there was a guy in here for a little bit, and I came in about September. And so our referrals were kind of low here, and we kept it small just to try to get me in the door and get me comfortable. And then we kind of opened up the floodgates a little bit and took a lot more kids back. But at the same time, we moved out our middle school expulsion program. So right now we're sitting about 35 kids. We have the potential to be up to closer to 50, 55 kids. And so part of our communication out to schools too is just letting them know, hey, we do have space, but we have a pretty stringent entrance policy and what they need to do, especially with moving special education students.
So I imagine that there are some critical skills and expertise that your faculty and staff bring to this unique population. Could you delve into what some of those skill sets and areas of expertise are?
Well, I think the first thing that you got to have is you got to have the heart for it. It's not a job that is cut out for everybody. It does challenge people at their core values, you know. And so that heart component is probably the biggest thing that I see out of them. They have this willingness and this desire to help. They know that the kids' lives are not perfect and that they need help and support, and that we have families that are really struggling that need help and support as well. So the heart piece is the big one. And the other parts, you got to have the patience and the ability to. Behavior takes a lot of time to change. You ask adults to change and they get upset and angry. It's the same thing like with kids. They kind of dig in and they learn the skills that they learn, and they come to us and we're like, hey, we got to change that. And they don't really like to do that. So you got to have the skill, you got to have the patience. And, it's really just somebody that doesn't take it personally. You're able to get in there and really work your steps of your crisis management, look for the opportunities to connect behavior to feelings, and help them to see new connections. And then also invite them, the young kid, the learners, to be able to think about new solutions and new ways that they could do it and help support them. So, yeah, we've got a really great staff. I'm really proud of the work that they do. Every single person here I know has a really, really intense heart and love for the kids that we have. Without that, you really don't have a spot to stand on. A personal philosophy of mine is you can't take anything personally. It has to shine through here because kids are going to attack you every day and they're going to say things that aren't nice and they're going to throw stuff back at you. And that's got to be okay with you. You got to be okay and still see the kid and shake his hand and tell him, I'm really excited to see you tomorrow, and then show it.
Yeah. So it's an undying and unyielding support of kids who just really may not give you at face value the respect you deserve, but that you love them no matter what.
Yeah, it's people's values, and a lot of times they get in the way of like really working really well with these kids because you get stuck on, well, that's not how they should act, and that's not how they should be, and they shouldn't treat me like that. And it tends to look a little bit like ego to me, like, hey, look, the kid's showing us what he knows. Behavior is communication. He's trying to tell us, or they're trying to tell us in the best way that they know how. And emotionally and maturationally, and we all know what trauma does to the brain. It slows down the ability to really grow and develop at that pace where you would expect somebody that's 11, 12, 13, 8, 9, 10 to be able to do some different stuff, and they just don't have it. And that's where those skill deficits are. We've got to be able to meet them where they're at every day and say, you know what, you're okay, you're accepted, we love you, and we're here to support you.
What a powerful way to be met when you're struggling. I want to turn our attention now to a topic you really wanted to talk about when we were talking offline, which is this school to prison pipeline. In what ways does Summit interrupt the punitive practices that might otherwise push students in this direction or toward the courts or police involvement?
It's been a process that we try really, really hard not to suspend kids. Obviously, we have some incidences and other things that cross thresholds of safety that we have to do those things. But, I think that comes in with the teaching of the conflict resolution skills. A lot of our kids come to us and the only thing they know how to do is fight. And how do you solve problems? Well, we scrap it out. We put up the hands and we fight it out. And so the way that we're trying to interrupt it is we're trying to get kids to feel confident in what they can do, and also give them the skills to be able to handle conflict in a different way than what they've done at previous schools. The data's out there. When kids get suspended, when kids get expelled, when kids are removed out of schools, it makes them more and more likely that they are going to suffer some sort of time in jail. And so I think just being really honest and open with them and letting them know, like, this is vital. This is about your life and this is about the quality of your life moving forward. I always tell kids, I said, the skills we're trying to teach you are designed to help you be successful in school. But at the same time, like, if you choose to take these skills outside of your life and you focus on the things that are important to you, like your relationships, the people you love and care about, and making that a really tight and solid unit, these are skills that you can use in your life to help you to deal with bosses, to deal with, the loved ones in your life when conflict happens, because it's not if, it's really when. When is the conflict going to happen? So we try really hard to teach conflict resolution, and it's been a long, hard pull because we had a lot of resistant kids on it last year. But after the second year of being here now, I'm seeing just a lot of positive growth in our kids, that they are more open and willing to sit down with people when they've wronged them. I don't think it's the easiest thing for kids to do, is sit down and look at somebody in their eyes that they just had a fight with and that they were wrong, and say, I'm sorry for that. I didn't mean that. I was upset myself.
It's not that easy for us to do as adults. So it's not shocking that kids would have a hard time with it, especially if they've experienced some trauma.
Yeah, they're going back and they're communicating how they know how to, and we're getting some positive gains on that. Kids are asking to do restoratives now, and that really helps, and so instead of like where we have that conflict out there on the recess where kids are out playing, and all of a sudden there's a push going on, and that other kid pushes them where another school might suspend them. We're going to go talk to them and give them that chance to regulate and bring down that emotion, get their thinking brain back in order. And then we're going to try to tie that up pretty quick and say, hey, are you ready to talk to this person? They're like, yeah. And we're getting some positives on that. I had a really good restorative today between two young gentlemen that had some conflict, and fourth and fifth graders. I was really proud of them and how they handled it today.
What were some of the specific skills that they exhibited that that they've grown in that particular situation?
Well, these two kids came and they sat down, and taking the accountability is really where it's at. They were able to take accountability for what they had done. Both of them were able to say sorry and say, I didn't mean that. I was at a place where I was really angry and agitated. So they started to use some of those filling vocabulary words. I got escalated because of your action here. And so they put together a couple pieces, and they were able to say to each other, that really pissed me off. And, I would hope that in the future that you're going to be able to respect this line and this boundary that I have, because it doesn't make me feel comfortable when you say things like that to me. And the other kid was like, I'm really sorry. I wasn't trying to make you uncomfortable. Like, I made a mistake and I hope you can forgive me.
So it's really they're translating into words the feelings that got them there in the first place, into the conflict.
Yeah, and that's growth for our kids. From a lot of times, our kids come to us and they don't have any emotional vocabulary. Like, how you feeling? I'm pissed. How you feeling? I'm bored.
I think this is a good place to segue into this problem that I'm really hoping that you can shed some light onto, a problem that you and your team solve, or maybe you're in the midst of still solving it, you're still refining. But what is it that a problem you solved that required you all to learn something new or change your mindset so students could better succeed?
Well, I think back to a couple of years ago, and this will kind of tie back together. Is we set up some peer mentor and peer mediation stuff when we started restorative practices at R5 High School. I want to say in about 2016, 2017. One of our goals was to teach kids some better conflict resolution skills, to grow our connectedness in our school, and really make people feel like they belonged. We had some data from some years that, a lot of kids were coming. We had some success, but we didn't have a lot of kids that really felt connected. And so when we started our restorative practices at R5, we gave teachers just one challenge. We want you to work on the relationship with kids. That's it. I want you to know as much as you can about them. I want you to ask questions about their life, and how their brothers are doing, how their sisters are doing, and just really let them know that you care about them. And so we developed a peer mentor mediation type of class to really teach a lot of these skills to kids, so that they could go around when we had conflicts at R5, that we had kids that were ready and capable, and they could sit down and mediate these problems with kids.
So I'm just going to ask you for a quick clarification. R5 is the alternative high school in District 51 there. Could you give a little more context
Yeah, so
behind
R5
R5?
is an alternative high school in District 51. It has a young parents program for kids that have already had a kid. We take a lot of kids that really don't fit in at other schools, or maybe they're not meeting their credit requirements, or they've gotten behind. And R5 is kind of that shining light that helps kids to see the end of the light of the tunnel for graduation and doing some of those things. And it provides just a lot more support. And it provides an alternative schedule. A lot of our kids that went to R5 needed to work to help the family pay for the house and the food. And we had kids that were homeless and living in cars, and get a lot of kids that were coming out of jail and needed a place to land. And R5 usually ended up being that place. And so, yeah, it's an alternative school. It's again a great, probably one of the best places I've ever worked at. I love R5 with all my heart.
And so in 2016, you started to develop this peer mediation program just so that it wasn't all adults all the time solving conflict, but there were peer mediators, student mediators.
Yeah, and really, we started from the scratch level. We didn't have anything in place. We had restorative practices kind of brought in the year before, and they introduced one-to-one conflict resolution meetings with adults. And so we really wanted to round it out. Restorative practices is way more than just that conflict resolution. It has to do with relationships and just so much more. And so that first task that I put on teachers was, I really want you to develop and build that connectivity, and just we just want to have more kids that feel like they connect and they belong at our school. And our belonging numbers went off the charts. And so it was just a really good opportunity for that. And then we had our kids actually go through and design, and it was a class that I got to teach. We chopped apart a lot of different groups and a lot of different ways that restorative practices were done. Our kids studied it, and then they developed our own questions of how we were going to go through and mediate conflict. We learned about how conflict occurs between people, why these things happen. Is it about resources? Is it about just the disagreement and the conflict? And so we really tried to teach kids about conflict and then arm them. And we used to practice with them all the time. We give them scenarios and let them work out those and practice, practice, practice. We role play like a ton in that class. When kids felt confident, we would start bringing them into the rooms and having them watch us mediate conflict as adults. And then when they felt good and ready, they would go in and they would mediate the conflict with adult support. And they would be the ones running the meetings, and they would be the ones coming to resolutions for kids. And our kids really loved it. They enjoyed it there so much that we started to reach out to middle schools, because as I took that position on, I started to be a interventionist in the district, and I started working at middle schools, and I saw just a huge need that kids needed to connect. They needed the opportunity to circle up. They needed that. I don't know about you guys, but like middle school is a hard age.
I have one now. One of my kids is a middle schooler. It
They're
is hard.
amazing, weird, wonderful, wild creatures. They're very headstrong, and building on that social capital that we had created in our own program, we were able to start getting kids to go out and run like circles just with kids at schools to like show, hey, it's okay. It's good to connect. It's really good to be open and vulnerable. And so we had kids that start going out to schools in 2018. In 2019, we were going to middle schools, having our kids teach kids, hey, it's a really safe place to get in a circle. I love circle. This is where I connect to my teachers. I let teachers know what's going on, and I also could connect to my classmates. And so that was really cool to see. And then we ran into COVID, and that kind of shut it down. And then I moved to another position, and the restorative practices, all the stuff continued at R5. But coming back here to Summit full circle, we had issues with our kids really feeling comfortable and sitting down in circles and being open and vulnerable. We'd sit down for circle time in the morning, and we'd have kids blow out because they're just like, I hate circles. I don't want to do it. I don't want to talk. I'm not going to do this. And they would dig their heels and their feet in. And so I talked to Courtney Valerio over at R5, who's the assistant principal that helped me develop the peer mediation class. And what they're still doing with peer mediation over there is like, hey, I'd really love it if you guys could bring some kids. And they're like, hey, we got the leadership class still going. And their kids come over and visit with our kids once or twice a week. And they come and sit down in circles with them. And what they really do is they come over and they model what it's like to be a student, to sit down in the class and to listen to the teacher And that social capital for our young kids and our middle school kids also, they look up to 17, 18, 19-year-old kids. They look at him and they're like, man, that kid is cool. I want to be like him. And it's so cool to see where we're at now. From our circles last year, we really struggled to get, especially our young kids, our 4, 5, 6, 7 classes were really struggling to sit down. And now they'll sit down, and we have younger kids in the class that are learning how to run circles and be the circle leaders. We're getting that positive gain.
So you've really been able to develop some of that. I guess it's almost like they have peer idols that they aspire to be, so they'll give it a go.
Yeah, and a lot of these kids came over and started working with us in January last year. And within a couple weeks, we saw some immediate changes. Like, kids were sitting down, and we were having really good, meaningful circles with our classes. And those same kids came back this year. And so when our kids saw them, they were so excited to see them, because they built relationships with them. The kids had really taken that time to go outside and learn about them, about the kids and what they like to do. And, we give them time to go out and have fun together and play and throw some cards down, and maybe just take that half-hour break in the day to really work on that connection. Because a lot of our kids come to our place and they don't feel connected to a lot of people. And so it's an intentional practice of ours of trying to increase that web of connection and give them so many more opportunities to connect with other human beings. And it just so happens they're really cool teenagers that are coming over, and they're showing all the really good stuff. They really like being in classes, and they're in leadership over there for a reason. And they come over and filter that leadership down and help our kids.
So it sounds like one of the problems that you were really trying to solve was to increase kids' sense of belonging within the school and increase their skills to be their skill set to be in a circle, a problem solving circle, but eventually to increase their conflict resolution skills as well.
Yeah, I mean, it always starts at the base level, and some of those ground zero practices, when you start looking at restorative practice, are about making connection. There's nothing to restore if there's not a relationship. And when I came in here last year, that was one of my big pushes with staff, is like, yeah, we can do all the restoratives in the world, but if they don't have a relationship with you, it's not meaningful. And when we sit down in a circle, it's our time that we get to take our hat off, and I don't have to be the teacher. I can just be a human being, and I can be open and vulnerable, and I can come in and say, you know what, I'm not having a good day. Like, my heart hurts today. I had this thing happen, and I don't feel good, you know? And it's about really kind of opening yourself up, which for a lot of teachers or educators isn't the most comfortable spot, because we've been told over and over, hey, there's certain lines and parameters that you really can't cross. And I try to knock those down, and let kids know where I'm at, and be honest and open and say, I'm having a great day, or, you know what, like, I'm only a 4 today. Like, I had some stuff happen and my heart hurts, and I just want you guys to know that, you know, I'm here. I'm here for you, and I know what it's like to not feel good.
So, what are some of the next steps for you and your team around this peer mentorship program, the next phase of the work, if you will?
Well, we want to develop our own leaders. Our goal is to get all our kids back to their home school within a short amount of time, that they don't become a long-term resident in our program. That's our goal for everybody. And when we send kids back, we want to be able to give them those skills and that confidence and that leadership ability, to where they feel like they can talk, they feel like they can be heard, and that they do have a voice, and that their voice really does matter. And so we want to build our own leaders to be able to lead our circles and do those things, and also be those positive peer mentors in class. Because when they go back to their school, that kid is going to have a set of skills where they're going to be able to help support, look through conflict at a different lens, and say, how did I affect this situation? How can I help make it better? Because we all play a part in it. And so getting that accountability part with our kids, but We love to build our own leaders, and we have, and we want to continue to do that work. Put those leadership components in. Hey, that's part of the exit criteria is you need to be a leader, and I need to see you being a positive peer mentor and really helping kids when they struggle, because then we can lean on them. A lot of times kids are really good at it. They're really good at listening to each other, and they're really good at hearing each other, and knowing why that person is acting that way, and just somebody that is there and say, hey, you're okay, I'm not going to leave you, I'm here to support you.
So once kids have maybe built this agency to be great mediators, it sounds like a piece of this is to hand them back to the schools and let them know, hey, this kid has this great skill set now that maybe you could employ when they come back to their
Yeah,
home school.
absolutely. I mean, that's a goal. I think restorative practices are so deep to my heart. I wish that we were a complete entire restorative practice district. It was something that I'd written some proposals for years ago, that this is really the way that it should go, because when we look at kids, and we're getting more and more trauma kids that go through, the conflict resolution isn't something that the kids just know. Kids don't know social skills. Like, a lot of kids don't know how to shake that hand, or how to have a tough conversation, or how to make that different choice when I'm getting that peer pressure or those other things, because it is a skill. And we want to be able to arm those kids that they feel good about going back, that they have a toolbox to be able to handle um, what happens at a daily occurrence at schools, which is conflict, and sometimes it doesn't feel nice to be at school. And we want those kids to feel strong and confident. They are going to be successful.
You mentioned something in our conversation before this idea of untangling the trauma response of school. Can you tell us more about that idea?
So we have working in my time as expulsion was very eye opening. It's where I really came into a lot of close contact with the school to prison pipeline. I was able to look at a lot of data that I hadn't been able to see before, and just see the amount of kids that trauma does occur at a school based location as well. And I just think back here to some of my kids that I have in this place right now. It never feels good to be kicked out of somewhere. You put those shoes on, you feel, if you've ever been kicked out of somewhere, it really sends that message that, hey, I'm not I'm not a very good person, and that I don't make good choices, and I'm not really worth it. So a lot of our kids come to us with this kind of defeated feeling, and it's for expulsion as well. That I ask kids all the time, like, did you have anybody you connected with or that you trusted? And they're like, no, there was nobody I could talk to. I tried to talk to people, and they just kind of push that paper down the road. It's going to be okay, just leave it alone. And those answers aren't good enough for me. A lot of my kids come in now, and they still talk about being at their previous placement, and they talk about things that adults have said to them. And it really does cut, and it stays fresh in their mind. It may be 3 years since they've been at their school, but they still remember what the adult told them, or how the adult treated them, or how the adult reacted. That's up to us. And know better, do better is something that I live by, because I never got into this with the intention of hurting anyone, you know, and I don't think anybody else really did either. But some of those unintended consequences with how we take or how we talk to kids, or, sometimes we get past our own point and we feel we got to say something, it's probably not a good idea to say it, because it will stick with a kid. It'll stick in their heart, and it will make that cut. And it takes a long time to heal that. So we're really trying to untangle that when they come into my office, like, and I see parents come in, and this is like on that first discipline call. They're heightened, they're ready to fight, their claws are out. And I just try to approach them and say, look, I'm not mad. I'm not going to talk down to you. I'm still going to talk to you with respect. because I know you're going to be back here, and we're going to work on what didn't go right this time. And that's okay. I'm grateful for that opportunity to continue to work with you on stuff you need to work on. And so it's really about framing that as crisis is opportunity to learn and grow. But so much of what happens with our kids, they come out pretty beat up from schools, and I get to see that firsthand.
So a piece of the work that you do there at Summit is also undoing the trauma that kids have experienced just in the school setting.
Yeah, a lot of our kids are like, I'm never going back to that school, and I never want to go back to that school. I don't want to see any of those people anymore. It just didn't work for me, you know. Saying, okay, like we're going to have more opportunities, and you're going to run into adults, and some of them are going to be really good, and some of them you're not going to get along with, and that's going to be okay, you know. But school is that safe place, and that we're always going to be here. So even if you're at your other school and you don't feel connected, you're still connected to us, and that we're always going to be in your corner. I think about somebody in boxing or like those fights and they got to hold that spit bucket, you know?
Really, you really are a football coach.
No, we
Um,
really do. We hold that bucket all the time and you're going to get spit on you. But our job is to really, pep those shoulders up. You got this. And like, let's get back in there and give it another shot, you know?
Thank you, Sean. What a wonderful story of collective teacher efficacy, and it's beyond collective teacher efficacy because it's also student led and student. It's the whole student grown initiative that they really helped create and craft the peer mentorship program between R5 and Summit School.
Yeah, it's been so beautiful just to see. I'm so grateful. They've done such a good job with their leadership class that they come in and man, it's really helped to turn around a couple of our classrooms. Our kids they're excited for them, and they come and their kids come over and they come and they run recess breaks with our kids and they have fun with them and they just got other kids to play with and somebody to really look up to so that when something doesn't go right and that kid says, "Hey, that's not cool." That's got a lot more weight with that 17-year-old than me saying, "Hey, dude, that ain't cool," you know?
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, they get a little mad at us sometimes for saying that.
So we're close to the end here, and you're my first guest, so thank you for that. And I have some closing questions that I hope to ask you and all future guests on the podcast here to close us out. So you're a new leader. How has your lens shifted or your perspective or perceptions changed as a result of moving into a leadership role versus some of the other roles you've held?
You never really know until you walk in the shoes. It's always, and I was a teacher for 20 years. It's always easy to look at it and be nitpicky in those things and say, I would have done this, I would have done that. And just getting a chance to walk in the shoes and understand what pressure is with it has really helped to humble myself. I came in with this idea that, hey, I don't ever want to suspend a kid. That had to shift. There's absolute times that it's necessary, and you got to get the kid out of the program to get that reset and that time away so that they can come back and have a good, positive, healthy conversation. It just really gave me a deeper sense of like the school and the school process and just some other parts that there were blind spots for me when dealing with the human element, especially the adult element has been one of the hardest things for me to learn because as a teacher and as an intervention specialist and a special ed teacher, I was able to just focus on my 30 kids or my 20 kids that were in class and really put my effort and energy into them, and not really worry about adults and if they're happy or not. So I've really had to change kind of the way that I roll because I am so student centered that I still have blinders on at times where I don't see the adult. I'm more focused on the kid, but really taking care of the people in the building and making sure you're being responsive to that and the needs because the things that they're bringing you are very important to them. They're going to help them do their job better. And we've got to be able to help and support each other. So Learning the adult stuff has been the most challenging and complicated spot, as well as all the other nuances with being a leader, like the deadlines and the paperwork. And so, yeah, it's been a trial by fire for sure.
Yeah. But it sounds like you're applying some of your restorative practices of just get to know people, the adults in the building, and what's important, what matters to them, so that they feel a sense of belonging to this team.
Yeah, and really giving that open door. I came in under really not very good circumstances. And so the building was very, very upset and angry last year. And so it took a long time. And I'm still working towards that to try to give people that opening to come in and that I'm going to listen to you. I've had some people come in and scream, and say some pretty unnice things and be really upset, but they needed that chance to vent. And again, if I'm not going to take it personal with a kid, I'm not going to take it personal with that adult. I want to model what I really believe in. I want to walk the walk and talk the talk with adults just like I do with kids and say, it is going to be a safe space. You're going to be able to come in and get off of your chest what you need to so that we can problem solve together because it can't come from me. It's got to be us. And let's sit down. Let's talk this out because it's a valid point.
Well, wonderful. Thank you for talking about this new leadership. It always comes back to managing adults, which is so much different, but so similar sometimes to our students. Could you talk a little bit about what are some of the reasons you chose a career in education?
Yeah, absolutely. I was pretty lost. I had that anthropology degree and I really couldn't get hired in 2002. Um, so I worked at a gas station and a paint store. And then I started building houses when I moved to Colorado Springs. I actually went around for a week and tried to sell vacuum cleaners door to door, which didn't have any paycheck to it. And I was getting ready to have a kid like within 2 months. And I worked for a week for free. I didn't sell any vacuums. I'm not a very good salesman. So that one didn't work very well. But I was working on a house and my son was due. He's going to be 21 here in November. So it's 21 years ago. And I saw an ad. I saw an ad in the Colorado Springs paper to work at Emily Griffith Center for Children, and just kind of had this epiphanal moment. Like I remembered all the. Whoo, you're gonna tear me up here. I just remember all the love that I got from some of my coaches. Daryl Simonton, Jerry Pitzer were two instrumental humans in my life, and I was like, I know what I want to do. I want to go give back that gift. Because I got to take a deep breath here. I really don't think I'd be here without that love and support.
So you got it. You got to be here, and now you get to give it back, pay it forward. And I can only imagine the number of kids who are paying it forward based on their interactions with you.
It's so cool. I got a kid that was expelled a few years ago, and he's one of the leaders over at the R5 program, and he got expelled, I think, twice. But his job and his goal, he wants to come and work at Summit because he knows that he can make a difference.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. I feel like I don't want to make you cry anymore.
It's part of
With
the
this,
Irish. It's part of the Irish. You ask me personal questions. I got my water close because I heard it's almost impossible to cry when you're taking a drink, but it is close to the heart. It is.
what are some of the things that just keep you persisting every day, even when you have a day we started the podcast? Today was a day. It's a Friday afternoon, and today was a day. What keeps you persisting and coming back on a Monday?
It's absolutely the most important day in the world that I have. It's the gift. It's the gift of that day. Kids deserve it. And, I want nothing more than to give my best every day. And it's not the best every day. Sometimes we come in and we're tired, we're beat up, we're burnt. But today is that day. Today is that chance. I have a chance to make a change with a kid. And it's up to me and how I come in. And so really try to walk in with that mind frame that Today might be my only chance to make that connection. I have to seize it. It's up to me.
Yeah. So the thought of seizing this moment with this kid could make all the difference, and you just don't know it. And you may not know it ever, even though it happened.
You got to walk it, man. It's all you got is you got a chance and you got an opportunity, and whether you seize it or not, because we've all been there, you know. But that's up to me. That's my choice, and I'm going to come in the right spot, and I'm going to pick up the axe every day because I believe.
Sean, we're going to turn to a little bit more of a fun question now.
All right.
Uh, if your school won a $1 million grant, what would you and your leadership team spend it on?
My goodness. That's actually just crossed my mind this morning because I often think of winning the lottery and what I would do for the school and those things. We operate on such a small budget that I would like to create some different spaces, like an art therapy room, like where kids could go in and it's a spot to, hey man, I just don't feel good. I need 20 minutes in the art therapy room. Let me go throw some around. I would also try to put in some other things that we don't have, like electives. I think it's very important for our kids to get up and move. I'd love to be able to hire a PE position and then maybe like an art teacher, or even use the staff that we have to say, hey, you guys, I got a lot of passionate staff and different things to provide them just with materials and things that they could use with kids. And then I would definitely replace our playground. It's a little beat up at this point. Being that we're an emotionally behavioral school, our equipment's a little shoddy. And so, but I think the big things are really just trying to get kids in the community, giving them those opportunities to go out and experience different things. I believe very much in generalization and getting kids out into the community, give them enriching learning experiences. We take our kids snowshoeing. We try to go out as much as possible, but with the budgetary restrictions that we have, you know, it becomes very hard. And I got to look for donors and for other people to help support so that we can get our kids in the community. And then, get some upgrades here. We need to build a couple walls and um, getting our kids just some cool technology and other stuff that hopefully they would take care of, but sometimes they don't.
Yeah, and a backup fund for the technology that meets a bad end on a bad day.
Yeah, getting some of those smart boards and those things to make just the teaching job easier and just trying to provide that support.
This question is really just a general question, and then I'm going to close with anything that you want to add. But given your experience and the context in which you teach, what do you see as the purpose of education?
I think back to a guy named Dave Maynard that I worked with at Emily Griffith Center for Children, and one of the things that he said, and this was going through my TCI, which is therapeutic crisis intervention out of Cornell University. He said, all these kids are going to be our neighbors someday, and is this going to be the kid, that ends up dating your daughter, or this kid might be your neighbor, and you don't want him pissing on your fence. It kind of had that funny notation to it, but it was also very telling to me. We're really trying to raise this generation and help them so that they are good neighbors and that they do feel confident and that they can lead that life, because people that have worked in special ed, people that have worked in intervention, um, people that work in expulsion and these schools, they know that a lot of our kids do fall through the cracks and that a lot of our kids do get lost and they never get that opportunity because their choice is so young. Kids deserve it. They deserve that opportunity. What is education about? It's about helping our kids, and meeting them really where they're at and helping them build that confidence and that skills that they feel that they're going to be successful.
What's one question you wished I'd asked you, and how might you have answered that question?
I don't know. I really don't have anything. I just really love talking about education. I love talking about kids. I love talking about intervention and trying to think about things in a different way. And so I just feel grateful for the opportunity.
Well, I have enjoyed this immensely. I just really thank you for sharing your journey toward this collective, efficacious new beginning for the peer mentorship program, or revitalization rather, of peer mentorship at both R5 and Summit. If any of our listeners would like to contact Sean, he is on LinkedIn. It's Sean, Sean Mulvey, Mulvey. And if anybody out there has $1 million and can fund an art room or a playground, that's where you can find him. And listeners, I hope you walk away with a sense of agency and optimism and your capacity to solve what you think might be intractable problems with your own teams. Thank you for listening to the show and giving us a like or a thumbs up wherever you are listening to this podcast. Sean, thank you again for your time and for the clear dedication and care you have for each and every student in your building.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's great to work with you. I really appreciate the opportunity to just have a great conversation. So very uplifting. What a great way to end a Friday.
I'm so glad.
Thank you for listening. The Efficacious Educator Podcast is produced, edited, and distributed by me, your host, Sarah Bialek. This podcast is the property of the Efficacious Educator, LLC. Unauthorized use of this content without permission is prohibited. All rights reserved. Copyright 2024.